The Giza Pyramid Complex, home to three of the most famous pyramids, the Sphinx, and a collection of smaller pyramids. When we think of pyramids, we think of the pyramids of Egypt. But what was their actual purpose?
Wow.
This is something archaeologists have been debating for centuries, with the most popular theory being that they were essentially massive tributes to deceased pharaohs, burial tombs combined with temples. The theory is helped by the fact that the two largest pyramids are known to be built as tributes for two famous kings.
Yeah, actually, I know that the pyramids were built for, I think, burial grounds. They were burial grounds, but let's just go with the flow.
Khafre and Khufu. Most of the other pyramids have remnants of bygone monarchs stored somewhere inside of them, but because many of the pyramids are dense buildings with only a few narrow passageways, they are not easy to explore, and many have large areas that we are yet to see. This has led to some bizarre alternate theories. One of the most popular theories is that the pyramids weren't tombs at all, but fulfilled a far more practical purpose: grain storage.
I think this has been a controversy for a long time now. Uh, I think there's a situation that goes that they are built by aliens. I don't know, because simply because we can't figure out how they are built doesn't mean that they are built by aliens. So this has always fascinated me for some time now. But let's see.
Facilities. Farming was a key part of ancient Egyptian culture due to the arid climate of the country. Brutal sandstorms could come at any time and wipe out your entire crop. So keeping a large store of grain would be a smart move for any leader. And given how big the Egyptian empire was at its peak, they would need to find a pretty large place to hide that grain. This theory is particularly popular among Christians, who sometimes attribute the design of the pyramid granaries to the biblical figure Joseph. A line in the Old Testament refers to Joseph storing up mass quantities of grain in granaries and saving the kingdom from famine. The theory gained new popularity when presidential candidate Ben Carson cited it. But is there any truth to this theory? It's one of the less outlandish theories about the pyramids, but it also doesn't make much sense when examined. For one thing, Egyptian granaries have been found. These were dome-shaped buildings that opened at the top, usually found near cities. They were much simpler structures and much easier to build than a massive pyramid. While grain has been found in the pyramids, it's only in small amounts, designed to serve as food for the resident of the nearby sarcophagus. Additionally, granaries are usually very simple structures, designed to serve as a giant vat. The pyramids aren't hollow, with only narrow passageways for visitors to make their way through, so it wouldn't make much sense to use the pyramids as a storage facility. But that's nothing compared to this next theory. The pyramids are extremely heavy and believed to have been put together through painstaking work by skilled laborers, using a complex and dangerous system of pulleys, and likely took many years to complete. They haven't moved from their current location in a very long time and likely never will, at least as long as you don't ask some creative individuals who believe they weren't built in Egypt. Rather, they simply settled there after cruising the seven seas as Noah's Ark during the Great Flood. How did this strange theory get started? For one thing, Christian texts indicate that Noah's Ark must have been very large. After all, it essentially was the world's largest zoo, and realistically, no standard boat could have handled carrying two of every animal. And if the ship was tossed around by the waves until the flood receded, it could have been built anywhere, and land anywhere, which would explain how it moved across several countries. The theory comes from a translation of the Dead Sea Scrolls, which refers to the Ark as pyramid-shaped, which might just refer to its roof, but has gotten many people's creative juices flowing. So what's wrong with this theory? Quite a lot, actually. For one thing, rocks don't float. There's no way the pyramids could have been a boat, because they would sink to the bottom of the sea. The way the pyramids were constructed, with them having little internal space, also means this theory is quite unlikely. However, some theorists argue that the pyramids might have a unique link to the core of Noah's Ark story. If they were already built at the time there was a major flood in the region, it's possible that people could have survived by taking refuge in the massive buildings, which could cause an association between the two. But if there ever was a Noah who sailed
to me, I think the pyramid was built after the flood, not
across a flooded world, he definitely didn't do it aboard the Great Pyramid of Giza. Some people are less concerned with how the pyramids were built. They focus on the message they're trying to tell us. Do the pyramids have a hidden message buried within? If you ask Scottish astronomer Charles Piancy Smith in the mid-1800s, he would tell you they had a big one. Inspired by the work of John Taylor, one of the big proponents of the Noah's Ark theory, he came up with his own theory and wrote a 600-page tome about it. He claimed that when the pyramids are measured using a system known as pyramid inches, the architecture itself starts to present coded messages. These messages tell the complete story of the history of the Earth. the past, present, and future. And when he says everything, he means everything. He cited a passage of 33 pyramid inches as representing the birth, life, and death of Jesus. When the path was followed to the end of the Grand Gallery, he claimed that the pyramid inches between Jesus' death and the terminus were the number of years before the next resurrection and the end of the world. The description was incredibly detailed and became a key text in the development of Christian apocalyptic lore. There is just one problem with the theory. All of it is completely made up. The entire concept of the pyramid inch was created by British Egyptologists in the centuries before Smith's book, and the system is now largely considered to be the product of Eurocentrism. That didn't stop it from spreading, and for several hundred years theorists based their findings on these flawed concepts. No one took it further than Smith, though, using it as the foundation for his entire apocalyptic lore. By the end of the 1800s, Egyptologists were moving away from the idea of using Western measurements to analyze ancient Egyptian structures, and Smith's predictions faded into crypto-history. But that wasn't the only strange theory that speculated about the pyramids hiding a coded message. Were the pyramids an early attempt to map the stars? The answer is yes and no. It's all but certain that early astronomy played a key role in their design, as the Great Pyramid contains 4 shafts clearly aimed at specific points in the sky. It's believed this was a way to guide the dead pharaoh's spirit toward their final destination in the star.
I think this is one of the most actual conceptions of the Great Pyramid. As a scientist growing up, I actually took this as somewhat. I could not believe it because, yeah.
And the Egyptians, like many early cultures, associated the stars with specific gods, and may have believed these stars provided a connection with their deities. But one modern writer took it further. Most of the strangest Egyptology theories date back hundreds of years, but Robert Bauval only wrote the Orion Mystery in the 1990s. It claimed that the 3 main constellations of the complex weren't just pointing toward the stars, but they were 3 Bauval theorized, but only if they were built about 8,000 years earlier than they were actually built. But these are far from the strangest theories about the pyramids. Were the pyramids built by aliens? How about Atlantis, or Satan himself? These popular theories keep making the rounds, but they've all been quickly debunked. Supporters point to the presence of other similar pyramids around the world, but that's explained could build, and many different ancient cultures likely found this out at some point in their history. Many of these theories that claim some other secret force built the pyramids usually imply that the ancient Egyptians weren't advanced enough to build something so impressive, something that has been disproved time and time again. But what if they were even more advanced than we previously thought? The pyramids have been long given mystical powers in the minds of some fans, with people claiming they can feel a unique energy when they approach them. The first example of this came in the 1930s when a French author, Antoine Bovis, claimed that he'd been inside the pyramids and saw a garbage can full of food and dead animals that wasn't rotting. The pyramid structure had somehow preserved them, and he believed that recreating the structure on a small level could preserve food from decay. 20 years later, a man from Czechoslovakia claimed that storing your razor blades in a pyramid would harness magnetic energy in such a way that would prevent them from getting dull. This strange theory came to be known as pyramid power. But is there any actual evidence to support this? It is true, some things within the pyramids were preserved extremely well. However, when these theories were created, we didn't know nearly as much about Egyptian history as we do now. The well-preserved mummies found within pyramids were not preserved due to some magical pyramid construction. They were found in this near-perfect condition due to how carefully the bodies were drained of anything that could rot before being buried. The closed-off nature of the pyramids also protected many things within from the elements, preserving them far more than would otherwise be possible. But some theorists claim to have found a very different power within. It was the height of the Cold War, and the US and USSR were constantly fighting to get an edge on each other in the great game of spycraft. They had agents all around the world, especially in countries that had only recently regained their independence, like Egypt. The KGB spy activities in Egypt were largely unknown until the Russian intelligence archives were declassified in recent years. But one file captured the attention of Egyptology buffs everywhere, detailing a visit to the Great Pyramid, where the spies claimed to find something extraordinary. Is there really a mysterious force lurking within the Great Pyramid? The agents reported feeling a magnetic force coming from the walls outside the pyramid, repelling them like the same poles of a magnet repel each other. While they were unable to find any clear explanation of this phenomenon from the outside, and accessing much of the inside of the pyramid is impossible, that didn't stop people from speculating. Combined with the presence of a mysterious void within the pyramid that no one could explain, people came up with a theory that a massive energy power plant was present within the pyramid that could power much of ancient Egypt, as well as possibly even transfer energy to other pyramids around the world. It was a wild theory, and one that has never been proven in any capacity. Since no researcher has ever found evidence of the energy that the KGB agents reported, maybe they just needed something to put in their report to keep them from being demoted.